Okay, so we'll look at the file in a few minutes. So right now, what we want to start doing is go through this PowerPoint that we built for you guys in a couple of basics of data analytics. And well, kind of like the overall purpose of today's session is.
Sorry, one second. It's in the flash drive, so I hope you use it.
All right. So, kind of like the purpose of today's session is to talk to you about how to get insights from data. Now, it's a bit complicated when you get into your internship or into your full-time job or wherever you're going to be going, and you're going to be asked to play with bunches of data. So, usually everybody is used to talking about an Excel file that has a couple hundred lines, and it's very easy to work with. But once you get something that's humongous, and I'm talking about 1,000 lines, 5,000, 100,000 lines, it gets more complicated. The computer slows down, and then you just can't go like line by line figuring out what's going on. So you need a new technique or some sort of way that can help you figure that out very quickly and make sure that you're doing your job and that you're also kind of like getting to those insights and recommendations during your internship. So first I'm going to talk about that insights from data, what it is, how to get to it, what are the steps. Then we'll be talking about how to manipulate data. There's a handout going on. We don't have one to get in. It's right here in the front desk. And it's basically just talking about what are the most common problems that you face with data, how to solve them, what are the most frequently used formulas that you need to know for the starter. And then we'll wrap it up with a small little case of a bank that needs some help controlling their operating expenses. So let's start with insights from data. So there are three main kind of like insights that you can get from data. So you can get insight, which is just looking at the data and coming up with some sort of analysis of what happened before. But in today's world, that's not very useful. That's what we call insight. It's looking at what you have right now and figuring out what happened in the past. But that's very simple. What we really want to do is get some insights. That's basically interpreting the data and responding to it right now. So it's understanding what's going on in the present tense to do something immediately. The final step is predict. Just predicting and predicting what's going to be happening in the next week, month, years, depending on what you're going to be doing. For instance, some of you here are going to Walmart. Walmart uses a lot of foresight to predict how many SKUs are going to be needing for one particular store when Walmart is doing. Other people find it that are going to be projecting stuff years ahead if you're working on a new product over in a biotech company in the West Coast. So it just depends on the type of project that you're doing, but foresight will be kind of like the last step of the game. Just to have that case on. Cool. So what does this mean? It means that you need to extract the insights from data, and that's kind of like a training ground to be a consultant. Like you get a bunch of stuff, no sense of direction, just like one objective, and then you have to make something happen. Cool. So there's a couple of differences between data and insights. So the data we're talking about single instances. It's just one data point. It's just saying that today the weather in Chapel Hill is 85 degrees. That's data. You can collect it discretely through many different sources. So if we're talking about the weather, you can get it from your phone app, you can get it from the Weather Channel, from Google, from Yahoo, a bunch of different places. You can probably get to the same data point with many different sources, but that means that you have to collect them one by one to make sure that you're getting the same consistent result across all different data points. The insight, however, is a general pattern. It's saying that the weather around the triangle area will be 80 degrees during the next 3 weeks because that's what happens in every single spring. Data can be found everywhere, as I said. Very likely that you can Google stuff and you can get to the same data point everywhere. If you're looking at company data, then mainly a database or some sort of internal management reporting system that they might have to be a first source for it. But there are multiple places to get it. And that'll pose a challenge that we'll talk about later on. Data can be noisy, and by noisy I mean that data is not always perfect. So you can get a bunch of data points that can literally say nothing. Well, we have to take the noise away from it. You can get a survey result that says you're selling 50,000 products per day. Like that makes no sense. Like if you're a small little store with a 2 square feet, booth, you're not going to be selling it. It makes no sense. So that's noise with data. We have to find it, remove it, because if not, that insight will make no sense. What this means that insights will be scarce. You have to build them up from scratch, and they need to be distilled. And what we will be doing with the case today is giving a bunch of noisy data, converting it into some more distilled knowledge so you can actually go and propose to management on what to do going forward. So finally, data will be more deductive and inductive, while insights will be deductive and inductive in the sense that you'll need to test it over and over again to come up useful and simple to understand. So there are four main steps to working with data. The first one is data collection, and overall we'll be talking about something that I like to call data picking. The first step of data picking is called collecting data. And basically what you do is designing a research plan to acquire needed data. Now, when people talk about handling data or information, we always kind of like skip to the final part in which you already have the Excel spreadsheet and you don't really know what happened before. Now, in the internship, you'll probably need to do something that we call a data request. And a data request is nothing else than a fancy name to ask somebody to give you information. But if you want to get to that, you have to be very specific about what you need. So let's say we're talking about operating expenses for a bank in Mexico. Well, you have to start thinking about what a bank's expenses will look like. You have branches, you have overhead, you have loan collection and management agencies as well, probably security, the armored cars, ADMs. All of that, you need to structure it in some sort of way that makes sense, easy categories again, and then start asking for that data. Do you need it at the regional level? Do you need it at the national level? Do you need it at the branch level? Do you need it for every year? Do you need it only for 2 years? So that's a data plan that you really need to have, because if not, you're going to end up asking for the same stuff over and over and over again. And the people on the other side will either get tired of you asking for information, or they'll just not provide you with it. But that, then you have a problem. You have to aggregate all the data. So yeah, you filed 5 or 6 different requests for information. Now what? You have to aggregate them somehow. Now here the best practice is to always consolidate everything to one main database. Probably one Excel sheet will work fine. One Excel book, sorry, with different sheets for all the different databases. Something very important to take into account here is never ever delete a column or any sort of information within one data set. If you get a file that has 50 columns and 1 million lines, copy all of that and paste it somewhere, but do not delete columns or lines, because then you're going to be eliminating stuff that could be valuable going forward. And some people tend to do that, and something that always happens is that you'll ask for information and you'll have to ask for that again. So if you're changing around the format in a data table, then when you copy and paste and update your file, you have to switch around with the columns and reformat stuff, and it takes time. Now, I know that this is something that you'll think that somebody straight up undergrad will be doing, but even if you think about it, like most people at the MBA level will be doing this anyway, because you're part of the team and everybody has to like pitch in to work with that very extensive data file. So then, cool. So you already have your database. Now you have to test and validate the stuff against the individual ones. It's easy, as I said, but if you don't copy stuff entirely, you'll lose information. So you need to come up with some sort of validation to make sure that everything in one file matches the information in another file. And here's where conditional formulas will kick in. We'll talk about sum ifs and count ifs to make sure that you're also validating stuff against one data sheet to another. Then you need to arrange it in an easy to modify format. Now, something that's very important is that every file that you make needs to be made thinking that you'll need to make it again. So nobody gets it right the first time, like nobody does. And you're going to need to rework. And if you need to rework, you need to make sure that the time that you're spending doing rework is as minimal as possible. Because what you need to do is actually come up with an insight or a recommendation for something, not spend 100 hours manipulating something. So cool, what happens next? So the first step is distilling knowledge. And here's where you have already your data in a very nice to work format that people can actually work with. So now I have to purify data. And by purify data, here's where the hypothesis-driven method comes in. Now, some of you took the consulting skills and frameworks class. For those of you that didn't, it's just basically having a major idea of what's going on and then iterating until you come up with something. It's not struggling with data, it's applying logical steps to make sure that you're being easy about everything and coming up with a solution. So here is where the professors were talking about using the hypothesis method. But what happens with the hypothesis method is you need to iterate and sometimes change your hypotheses. So you need to make sure that you can incorporate new data points into the analysis as your work advances. So distilling knowledge overall is about testing your hypotheses, but also adding new things as they move along and making sure you're not losing anything in the picture. So finally, you generate the insights. Sometimes you'll need to create additional models, and this is what they call stress testing. So, of course, most models will be based on assumptions. I can say that I don't know, the growth of the Mexican bank would be 10% on a year-by-year basis. What happens if it's 5? What happens if it's 15? So those are the type of scenarios that we need to create. And overall, what this means is that, yeah, very nice and easy to work with Excel. Doing this will be very simple. It's just plugging and playing with the data, with Excel. So finally, make sure you keep all relevant outputs and you translate them into insights. Now this is kind of like obvious. I'm just not gonna say like your spreadsheet, cool, I'm done. But make sure that you're always finding the business sense behind the data, because it's very easy to just say, oh, it's 5,000, but what does it mean? And at the end, that's kind of like what you have to do. It's make sure that everything that you're talking about is relevant to what your stakeholder is. And as you can see, that's data pick, and we'll be talking about this throughout the entire session. Cool, so let's manipulate data. Let's say you already asked for your information, you got your Excel file from somebody at another department at your internship, and now what do you do? So there are 6 major pitfalls in handling with data. Some of them can be solved with Excel, and some of them will involve asking for more data. Just first, let's try by looking at what you can do first instead of asking for more information. So the first major problem is when you have unreconciled data. And this is something that you can always see happening. Now, from my experience, you'll end up downloading reports or asking somebody to download reports from the accounting system, the procurement system, the HR system. But at times those systems are not connected with another system, or they might be based in a different software, or they may not even exist, but it might be something very manual. So what happens is that you'll have, I don't know, total HR spend for a global bank in Mexico of $1 million in your SAP report. Then you go and you ask your accounting guy to validate that figure, and he sends you a report that says 1.2 million. Now, what do you do? So like, yeah, both are internal sources, both come from the same company for the same time frame, but they have different numbers. Now, what we do here is we apply Excel techniques to identify the source of that variation so we can isolate it. And then finally, if it's still unreconciled, flag that, raise a concern, and make sure that somebody else can tell you what the right figure is. But to do that, you really need to make sure that you are being capable of telling somebody that it's actually an error and providing you to use Excel techniques. You might have data that's incomplete, and by incomplete, I don't mean that, oh, I mean that has to be Excel file. It means that you'll need to get 5 or 6 different Excel sheets to make one big database for you. So you might have your spend figures with your customer IDs in one, but it turns out that your vendor IDs are linked to the vendor name in a different file, which is linked to the PO number in a different file. We'll do that later on today. But what do you do in that case? Like you have 3 different sheets, and you need all of them to create one database. So when you have incomplete data, what you need to do is start using VLOOKUPs and index matches, which we'll talk about later on, to consolidate all information into one big sheet. So what if the data is inaccurate? Now this is a bit tricky because you have what you need, but it's not in the right format anymore. Now this is very common with dates and text in databases. So sometimes you'll get, it's funny because dates are always messed up when you download a report from an accounting system. Like, they will always be messed up. I don't know why it is, but we just have a different format or something. So it's very common to see an Excel file with a date that's year, month, date. And then you have another one that goes day, month, year, or in any other combination. They don't really work, because Excel will only take month, day, and year, in that order, period. So it won't read it. It's still what you need, but it's not accurate enough for you to do. So here's where we start applying text-based formulas, such as date, end of month, mid, right, left, trim, and even substitute if you want to make sure that you're making that data into what you really need to work with. Do you have any questions so far? Any further questions about anything? Cool. So here we start getting into a problem which you can't do anything in Excel and you need to ask for more stuff. So what if the data is irrelevant? So if the data is irrelevant, you have to discard it. As I said before, you can only work with stuff that's actually meaningful for you, but not going to be boiling the ocean with stuff that makes no sense. So discard that information. Do not delete it though, just discard from your analysis. You might want it later on, but make sure you're asking for the right stuff. And here when you get irrelevant stuff, the most important aspect of it is to be very specific about what you want. because if you're not specific, you keep on getting irrelevant information over and over and over again. So what if the data is insufficient? So you found out that the data, we've reconciled it before, you've been writing, make sure it's complete, but it's not enough. So here you have to make sure you understand what the end goal is, you understand what you have, you do some sort of like gap analysis, and ask only for the middle section if you're missing. But you'll need more data, you can't do this with Excel. And if it's not available, then you'll need to come up with some sort of proxy for it. And here's where it's very common to use comparables for something. So if, I don't know, I remember one of our, in our consulting skills and frameworks class, somebody was trying to figure out the rate of reuse of a cup for Starbucks, and they came up with this idea of using, I think it was like recyclable models or something like that, or gym water models. So here's the comparable you can use when data is available, but you'll still need to ask more. And overall, meaning if you avoid this, you can make an adequate analysis, and you'll be in a good track to do a great job at the stuff. Cool. So let's talk about the three most commonly used formulas. And there are many formulas in Excel. You can even program them in VBA as well, because Excel is very limited in what you can do. And like the possibilities are infinite, but there are three major categories that can really save you a lot of time. First one is text-based formulas. And these ones, they just operate in text strings or in dates. And this is what I was talking about before with the mid, the trend, the right, arranging stuff again, making sure you're changing up format to what you really want. Then we have reference formulas. Now, reference formulas are a bit tricky because they're not the type of format you're going to be using on a day-to-day basis, but they have very specific applications, like a VLOOKUP, for instance. As we'll see later on, a VLOOKUP is a formula that most people have heard of, but not everybody has used. And even more, some people don't even know that VLOOKUP has two different flavors to it. There's a flavor if you want to use probabilities, and there's a flavor if you want to use text-based analysis. So they're very versatile, but they have very specific applications. And finally, conditional formulas. They can be number-based mostly, and some will involve something that's called array formulas, which we will not be going into today. But conditional formulas can be mixed with any of the other categories of either text-based or reference-based formulas to make something that's called a macro formula that's much more intricate and complicated. But today we'll just use a simple version of it for only like 1 or 2 data points. Cool. So this is like the toolkit that we had discussed for today. We will be covering only a couple of the formulas that are highlighted in blue, darker blue. But this is the most commonly used toolkit. Apply these. There's a handout with each of these formulas over here in the front, so make sure you take one. We will also be uploading these slides over to the Consulting Club's website later this week, so you can always just download it while you're in the internship and reference that to these at any point in time. This is also included within the handout, and this is literally each of these formulas that I mentioned before, with what they do specifically and how to use it. Of course, Excel always has their own little help function for it, but it's not just complicated when they tell you like, oh, like, what do I put here? Like, yeah, target cell. What's that? So I think this is a bit simpler, and we'll talk about some of these later on. So before we jump into the cases, anybody have a question? Anything that you want? Yeah.
If you can always Google any of these and find like a YouTube tutorial or like a step-through-step on how to use it if you forget to use it or forget how to. So as long as you know that it exists and kind of what the name is, you can always look it up.
Cool. So let's jump right into the case. So we're going to be talking about a global bank, and this is actual client data. This is an SAP report extract we're going to be working with. Hopefully all of you have by now. It's the 45,000 line report that was extracted out of the larger 1.2 million line report that I have. And overall, this is the story behind it. So we're talking about a global bank, really big bank. They got in trouble during the financial crisis. We're working to make sure that we're on track to be a better bank later on, but then their capital plan got rejected by the Fed in 2012. But that means that we're under heavy scrutiny in everything. Anti-money laundering was one of those pain points that they had. And unfortunately, not only did the capital plan get rejected in 2012, but several months later, the Fed also warned them against some inconsistencies in their anti-money laundering operations. Furthermore, a year after, their auditors told them that there's a very severe possibility that you're having fraudulent accounts and out-of-policy spend in your balance sheet. Furthermore, a couple months later, they were actually charged with fraud. By the beginning of 2015, they were losing their profits by 23%, just because of this fraud activity. So the chief procurement officer hired a consultants to figure out what was going on. And he had the hypothesis that there was a lot of out-of-policy spent within the operating expenditures. And he had hired these guys to come in and analyze the entire operating budget that they have for the next 2 years. Today we will be concentrating only on facility management expenses, and we will be coming up with some sort of recommendation for him of where to look for cut costs, and also what are the major areas where people need to tighten a bit more of a procurement policy. So I think before we even jump into the file, let's brainstorm a bit about what are the major components of facility management expenses for a bank. So we're talking about bank. We're talking about facilities management. What comes up to your mind? Like, what do you need for a bank?
You know, promotion?
Yeah, like think about like Wells Fargo.
You say like a branch.
Yeah, right, branch.
Physical location.
Yeah, you'll have branches in physical locations. Right. What else will you probably have? Yeah, utilities, which will probably be falling under branches. That's very good.
Security.
Yeah. Utilities. You'll have security.
Corporate overhead.
Yeah, you can have overhead.
The building.
The building, right? And building also implies construction services, and also leases and rentals, of course, as well.
Software licenses.
Right. Tech. And here you can also have kind of like your ATM management systems, and you can also have your software, as Stephanie said, and other licenses that are in there. Right? And then your corporate overhead can be anything. So just leave it as a question mark, because we don't know what it is. Every company has a different allocation rule for overhead, and we'll find out what this company is doing as we move forward. So if I were to ask you, where do you think most of the spend should be going for a bank in their facilities management across these three categories? Private building, right? Private building, but also security, right? And then definitely tech will be the third, and utilities should be your fourth major area of exploration. So with this knowledge that we have prior to jumping into the data, what will the advice be right now? Okay, so I actually want to understand trends in the market, year over year maybe, any seasonality. I want to understand the breakup of the spend, and I also want to understand the number of vendors. Right? So let's start looking at that. So if you want, let's open the file. Does everybody have it? If not, I'll ask a neighbor. It's a very big file. Cool. So let's go to database and enable macros. So welcome to the file. Now this is what you will get out of SAP if your company or whoever you're working with has SAP. And about the people that are at Walmart, they do have SAP. I'm pretty sure that Amgen operates on SAP and some biotech firms as well. And you'll be working with this, and this is literally what you will see in the internship if you ask them. Cool. So, yeah. Oh, yeah. That's actually a very good question. So, companies have something that they call ERP systems. Rajat knows much more about this than I do, so he could definitely need to check a word or two. But it's information management systems overall.
It's a way of consolidating all of your operations across the firm, whether it's procurement, finance, HR, into one system. So that sort of becomes like
So SAP comes with a module that allows you to extract reports, and you have access to it as an employee of the company. Of course, with certain limitations, and it doesn't really matter if it's SAP or whatever system your company is using. You'll probably get a report that's very much like this. SAP at least gives you something nice to work with. Others will give you like these horrendous data text files that are like comma separated and you can open up with a very specific way. Cool. So as you can see here, we have 21 columns and a total of 46,000 observations. Now this is a sort of big file. Has anybody worked with a file bigger than this? Yeah. So probably only 2 people here have worked with a file that's larger than this one. So this is good because this is not the type of stuff that you'll get at most places, and that you'll need a big company to actually handle it. Great, so what should we start doing? Looking back at our little framework of analysis. I think I want to start by looking at the categories, right? So let's do a pivot table. So does everybody know how to do a pivot table? Okay. So if not, a pivot table is very simple to do. You just select the range. Oh, so first up, filters. Filters are these little arrows that I had before. To use them, you just highlight the first row, and then you hit Control Shift and L, and you put them on. You can still hit it again, and you can turn them on. They're very, very useful. As well, another little trick is that most files will come like this, and then you lose track of what's like on top. Something I really like doing is putting freeze panes on. So to do that, you go to View. You first kind of like highlight a cell you think is working. I usually like to have the ID of what I'm doing to the left and also like the row names at the top. So I want to freeze panes over here so that I can take a look at the names of the columns and also the country that I'm analyzing right now. So you stand in column C9, you go to View, and then you freeze panes. What this does is that it doesn't really matter where you're moving, those rows will always be there on top.
In this scenario, does it really matter if there's it in C9 because everything's going to be next to it?
No, but let's say that you were operating with
Right,
all of Latin America,
Yeah.
so you'll definitely need it in case you want to do that. You can also just freeze it over here in cell A9 in case you want to just keep the top columns. Cool. So let's do the pivot table. So to do the pivot table, what you have to do is highlight the entire data table, go to insert, and of course the guys from like training history will tell you like use only the keyboard shortcuts, but for now let's stitch it and use the mouse. Okay, cool. So you highlight it, you hit OK. I'm going to get this, and now I want to start looking at probably categories of spend. So these are all the different columns. We have spend type, spend category, spend subcategory. So let's start looking at the categories. Helpful in facilities. That's very useful. Okay. So this is what we have, and we need to come up with some sort of measure on spend. So there should be amount USD over here. So let's put that in this data table. Now this is a very horrible format, right? Like this is very hard to read. So if you want to, switch this to something that's actually readable, just right-click any part of that section. You go to value field settings. Then you click number format. You hit currency and just hit OK. Yep, it's more readable. Now this is in dollars, so this means that this is $46 million. Cool. So what do we have over here? Let's just do it again, and I'll show you a little trick that some people don't know how to do with tables. So you can actually show values. So you can drag and drop the same column as many times as you want in a pivot table. Here what I did is I dragged the amount USD again because I want to show a percentage of total spend. So if I want to do that, again, I just right-click any part of the column that I'm working with, and I'm going to go to the option that's called Show Values As. And since I want to do it as a percent of the total, I'm going to do it as a percent of the column total. There you go. Cool. So what does it mean? Like, here's like the so what of the analysis. Like, okay, so we talked about over here in our little framework that we had expected building services to be the most important component of the spend. However, it turns out that utilities is actually making up a huge chunk of it. And the most, one of the most interesting categories is actually security and physical. Like, you're thinking about a bank, right? Like, you need security guards, you need armored vehicles, you need all that tech stuff. But it's only 8% of your overall facilities spent. So there are a couple of things that could be happening over here. First off, there could be miscategorized spend in different categories, not facilities. It could be under, I don't know, like consumer banking loans, right? It's misallocated because the rules are not working. Or it could be that this data over here is not working for you. Like, it could be dirty. Something could be happening over here we were not seeing. So, does anybody have an idea of what could be happening? No. Cool. So, what could be happening here is that we're talking about an accounting system, and remember, this is an extract ever spent. Somebody has to put the data in here. It's usually a person. So what happens is that people make mistakes. And what this is reflecting is a bunch of invoices that are not categorized correctly. Now, just by looking at this, I can definitely tell that it's not what I had expected. You could probably benchmark it against other reports, ask somebody that knows more about this, hey, does this make sense? To me, this is probably not the right way to look at it. So what you have to do now is start looking at further details to understand what's going on. Okay, cool. So again, we go back to our pivot table. We can still do it over here. Then we'll switch back to a big data file to take a look at what's happening. So there's something called product service type. Let's drag it behind the below the product expense subcategory. And let's arrange this from largest to smallest. Cool. So building services and construction and building improvement, they seem to be sort of like aligned to each other, right? Like maintenance supplies and construction improvement seem to be working together. Electrical services and product materials seem to be working together as well. So my sense here is that they're probably categorizing invoices in different criteria, and this is not going to work for us if you want to come up with some sort of analysis. $10 million in cleaning services, well, it might work, but if you consider that this bank has 1,000 branches, this means that these guys are spending how much, like $9,000 just for cleaning the facilities in a year. Like, is that a lot of money? It probably is if you're considering Mexico and considering that you could have outsourced this to a cleaning company. So $10,000 just to clean one branch seems like a bit high. You could probably pool resources into different categories. Great. So what do you think would be the next step in the process, knowing that these categories are probably not correctly allocated? Yeah, check for outliers or apply brute force. Right? It's always another possibility. So something that we could do is the following. Yeah. This is yeah.
So my sheet looks exactly like yours, except next to building services, I don't have the totals, and then instead, at the end of the section, I have total building services. So could you explain the difference of that?
That's a good question. See, so you have a total right here.
I have it like, so above construction and building equipment, I have another line in bold. That's a line all the way to the left that says building services total and has a total there. I'm just curious because this looks much cleaner than what I have in front of me.
Yeah, it's, let me see. Is it something like that?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. So yeah, Leslie brings up a good point. Pivot tables have many different formats that you can use. I personally like the one that I was using before, and to use that one, all you have to do is go to Design under the pivot table tools, go to Subtotals, and then show them at the top.
Got it. Perfect.
Now what that does is that it eliminates a blank line on the top of it.
Great, thank you.
No problem. Cool. So let's start by looking at the invoice level data and see what we can find. Oh, so did you see what happened here? Like I can't read the information, right? Like what happened? So something that pivot tables usually do is that they automatically adjust the column width to the width of the data in it. And it's really annoying. So what you do is that you go, again, to analyze pivot table and then pivot table options, and you click right here where it says auto fit column widths on that table. If you take that away, this will not happen anymore.
What's in the row setting?
So I put, let me see. So I use item description. And you'll get like this very ugly.
Right, and then you did.
You get this very, very, very ugly. So that's not working. Let's just set the height of the row width to 50 so we can take a look at it. And let's start organizing this. Again, sort it from largest to smallest. Oh, yeah. So you right click the column, the entire column, and then you go to column width, and then you hit any number. I just put 50 because it's a number that allows me to stay within my screen. Okay, cool. So,
Can you go back and explain how you got this?
so I'm dropping item description into the pivot. Does everybody have something very similar to this?
Do you usually keep creating pivot tables in different tabs, or just keep modifying one?
I usually use one, and if I really want to keep something, I use output charts, so we'll talk about later, that are automated from the database itself.
But it's not a good idea to have multiple, because then you're gonna have multiple sources.
The problem with that, that's a good question. So the problem if you do that is that you'll lose track of what's in what tab. And the problem is that you cannot overlap two pivot tables. If you have one pivot table at the top, and then you have one pivot table at the bottom, and then you switch the format from one to another, you'll run into the issue that Excel will not let you do that. It will delete all of the information, and then you'll have like nothing. So it's better to just work with one. And if you really need to have that information available always, we will look at how to create a nice little summary output that's automated using conditional formulas for it. Cool. So there's a couple things that are weird over here. So there's $112 million spent with no vendor. Yeah, that's weird, right? Like why? With like no item description. So yeah, like interesting, and it's 40% to spend. But there's some other things. Let's see if I can get it over here. It's interesting because it's not showing up. Okay, so this is a very interesting point. $112 million with no invoice information for it. Let's explore this. Now, does somebody know how to explore something within a pivot table? Like going, you double click it, that's right. So let's double click it. You can double click it anywhere. I'm gonna double click it here at the sum amount of USD at D4. Cool, so now we have an even more horrendous data table. If you take a look at over here, we see negative numbers. Now, what does negative spend mean? Like, if we're talking about operations. Yes, exactly. We're talking about reversals. Now, the problem with this data set is that they sent us information not only about spend, but also about reversals and purchase orders. So this is usually how this thing works. So you're paying a vendor and you give an invoice for $1 million, but their terms were stuff. So let's say that you're paying them within 15 days or 25 days or 45 days, they'll usually give you a prompt pay discount, and that'll reflect as a reversal or a negative credit. If they did not comply with what you were asked for, you'll have a return, and that return will reflect again as a reversal. But since most of these databases and ERP systems will save all the information, whenever you extract a report, you get both the original amount, and you will also get the reversal for any other stuff that's out there. If you're extending a purchase order, it will be a positive spend. If you're actually decreasing the amount, you'll get it.
When you double click, sorry, I'm asking a lot of questions. When you double click,
Yeah.
why does it create a new sheet instead of bringing you back to the original data?
I don't. Does anybody know? It just creates an issue.
I didn't realize I would have to like hide all of the, because is this still like 47,000? No, this is only like a subset of that
On the
data.
table you wanna look at versus your master table. So like even if it highlights, let's say you have 1 million rows, but it wants to highlight only 30,000, you'll still have to scroll through 1 million rows, so it's just better to move it into a
Okay. Cool. So now there are a couple of things that we want to do. So we've determined that this data set needs to work in a couple of categories. Which I like it out. So problems. First one is that we have miscategorized spend. Problem number two is they have reversals.
I have a question.
Yep.
Why is reversal a problem? I mean, reversal is always part of purchase order data.
Right, but the problem is that if you want to analyze, so we're in an anti-money laundering situation right now. You want to analyze everything. So you want to make sure that you know the reversals per spend and you know the total amount as well. And there might be a lot of overlap. So if we're dealing with more than 1 year in this database, we can see reversals from spend that was paid last year. So that might not be working for us. That's why it could be.
So it's, so right, you're saying it's a red flag, sort of that.
Yeah, it's a red flag. Yeah, it's a red flag. And there are many ways in which you could go about this. I personally will go forward by eliminating reversals because it creates other problems in the data set that I don't want to be looking at today. But we can definitely talk about what to do with that offline. Cool. So yeah, reversals are a problem because you don't know when they happened. They could have been done last year for spend that's paid this year. You could have paid for something this year and you're reversing it next year. So if you really want to understand the original amount, because you're procuring that, then this is kind of like the right approach for it. And then finally, we have not talked about formats. Now, I just mentioned something about, hey, we need to analyze time, right? Like, do we have spent from 1 year for 2 years? Like, we don't know. So let's go back to our database and figure out if there's some information that could give us some clarity on when the spend was done. Okay, cool. So we have 2 columns here, columns H and I, that reflect calendar year and calendar month. Do you think that helps us come up with a date? Like it does, but it doesn't in this format, right? Like, we need to find a way to put this in a friendly format. So here we need to start using, and another good practice that I would recommend is that anything that you do it at the far right of your data set. So let's say that we determined that this is not the right database, and we were working on it, and they need to replace it. So what I would eventually like to do is just copy the new table and paste it over here. But if I want to start like adding a column over here, like, oh, I want to add one here because I want to have a date right next to this one, then I can't do that. I'll have to like look over the different rows and columns and like copy one, paste another one. You might run into some trouble, you might paste it incorrectly, and it can lead to lots of rework. So something that I like doing is coloring the cells that I'm formulating in a different font or color so that I can understand that this is something that I am doing and that this is something that I extracted from the report. So for this database, the blue are going to be the ones that I extracted from the data, from the original data set, and the red ones are the ones that I'm manipulating with. Cool. So let's come up with a date. Does somebody know how to do a date in Excel? Cool. So there's actually a formula called date. So date, as I said, it's year, month, and but what you could start doing is, okay, so 12, 13, so I could start filtering everything that's in 2013. So one approach would be to, let's filter 2013, then let's filter January, let's filter May, and then all of these will be May. So I can start doing that one by one. But it's very time consuming. So to automate this, what you should usually do is the following. So you use the date command. You go back to your columns. You go to year. Then you go to date. And you need a day. So let's just go with the first of the month because it's easier. Like all months will have a 1. Like it's not like February that has fewer days than the rest of the months. And cool, we already have date. So we need to fill this all the way down. There are a number of ways in which we can do it. One of them is just to like copy and then paste it. That's one way. A quicker way is just to double click the corner at the bottom and it fills it all the way down. However, sometimes it's easier to work with end of months. And I'll tell you why. So, not for me, I know that you are, but if you're running a regression, for instance, and you can run a regression in Excel, and we won't be doing it here, but eventually in the summer we might have a need to do it. You need to do lags, and to do lags you need to operate with months before or ahead. And usually what you do is that you work with an end of months as your date. So Excel has a formula that's called end of month that does exactly this. So if you hit EO month, you select the date, and when you hit 0, it'll actually take you to the end of the month associated to that particular month in that year that you're working with. And this is actually, the 0 is just for the current month, but if you do 1, it'll take you to the following month. So here we're talking about December 31st of 2013. If we do -1, this should give you to the last day of October of 2013. See? So this is super useful, and it allows you to just standardize everything in dates, so you're always working with one day.
Does it depend what company I'm working for, what standard for, like, November 1st, is that better to be October 31st or November 30th? Does the company decide?
So, I think that's a good question. This just depends on what you're doing. Here, since we're trying to understand all the spend in 1 month, it's easier to just standardize everything at the end of the month. So, the reason I'm doing this is because if you look over at the other dates around here, you have purchase order date and purchase order date created, but they're sometimes different. And what that means is that if you need to allocate this particular item to 1 month, you could run into trouble. So the problem is that Excel, if you use a pivot table for the dates, and you have like, October the 1st, October the 2nd, October the 3rd, it will literally just throw out all of those dates into the rows and columns, and you will not be able to understand the month itself. So if you just standardize everything to the end of the month, it becomes easier to work with. Cool. So there's also another way to do it.
Quick question. What was the formula for
EO month. EO month.
If you put that data into another software that is not Excel, how would it lead a lag without generating a unique variable or indicator for each month or for each day? Like let's say 8/31/2013, that would be 1, and that is associated with also last row, if it makes sense.
So you're saying that I'll need to create an indicator variable for each one, right?
Like if not, how would we be able to do that?
So you'll need data for that.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Good question. So there's another way in which you can do this in one step. Does anybody feel like brave enough to try? No? Do you want to try? So I'll show you that. So what you could do is the following command. Start with your date. Yeah, you can use both. So you do end of month, date. Okay, so we go to our year, we go to our month, first day of the month, we close it. Sorry, add to 0. That's it. Same command, same result in one operation. It saves you real estate in your Excel. Now, the reason why it's sometimes better to do this in one column is because Excel, unfortunately, everything that you put there will save it, and it starts making the file more clunky. If you have more formulas operating on something, then it means that the Excel is processing everything automatically, and it can slow down your machine, or worse, it can actually make it crash. So the less formulas that you have, the faster you can process your information.
How would you decide in this case whether or not to save all those values as static values instead of running formulas?
So my view on that is whether you're doing this on a one-time analysis or you're doing it on a recurring basis. So for instance, if you're running reports that you have to do at the end of the week on something, it's better to just leave it automatically. So you can just copy and paste something, update the file, and then throw it in.
For one question, you could create a line before the name of the field, and you copy there the formula, and then you like copy as values the other.
Okay, so you save the formula and you recreate it next time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
So you like color it so that you don't.
Okay.
That's a good one. Thank you. Okay, so we can call this one full date. Cool. So let's now do. All right. Don't know how to spell. So now let's try looking at our pivot table and see if we can understand or find some patterns in this data on a month-to-month basis. So right now what we're going to do is we're going to keep the sum of dollars, and we're just going to use the spend subcategory for now. And I want you guys to include the date here. Now, as you can see, our pivot table doesn't have it. Yep.
Or did you actually save to the pivot table again?
Yeah. So exactly, that's what we're doing right now. How would you add it? Right. So there are a couple ways of doing it. So one way is the following. So if you go to your data table, you can click on your pivot table, then go to Analyze, and then change source, change data source. And as you can see, like hopefully you can see it. See how it only highlights a part of the data set? It highlights up to here. Right. And we need it to highlight all the way up here. Right. So there are a number of ways you can do this. The easiest one is just to highlight it again. That's always an option. So you go again, cell A1, open A, and highlight the entire thing, you click OK, and it serves the same purpose. Okay, cool, so now I have it. But what if I start adding more stuff into this? What if I start adding more columns? Do I really want to do that every single time? Probably not. It's slow, and it has happened to all of us, but you forget to update the pivot table, and oh, there was this new column that I needed to include. I forgot about it in the entire analysis as well. So there's a faster way. And this faster way involves one of my favorite formulas that's called offset. Listen. So has anybody here worked with name managers before in Excel? Yep. Has anybody here worked with name managers?
When you like name a cell or name,
Yeah. So we're going to do that, but we're going to do it dynamically. So as Jessica said, basically a name manager is assigning a name to either a cell or a reference. So let's say that I want to call this first row. So I can just click on cell A8 in my database, click name manager, new, hit over here, and I'm gonna name this, I don't know, like, yeah, first cell. Cool. So every time I'm working and I type first cell, I'll get that down. Yep.
Where did you go for the name manager again?
So formulas, name manager. Okay, cool. Yep.
I'm assuming it still leaves the actual cell, number, or name and number, letter and number active.
Yeah.
Otherwise override it.
Yeah, you have to overwrite. If you overwrite it, so if, let's say, I call it first cell, so if I change this to, I don't know, block, like,
You have to change, yeah.
it changes.
But you can still use a in a function when
Yep. Cool. So, let's talk about count A and offset first.
Quick question, do you have to do a new manager to all the rows in the in the eight column or each one?
No, not anymore. We will use shortcut for it. Okay, cool. So, first off, count A. So count A is essentially a formula that counts non-blank cells in a given range. So if you have a bunch of stuff, like a bunch of rows, have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I apply count A to this range, what number will it return? 4, right? If I apply the same concept vertically over here, it'll give me 4, right? Cool. So count A just needs for you to highlight the range. And it'll return that down. Okay. Offset, on the other hand,
Will that count exceptions too, or just if it's a number?
anything that is not blank. It can be
Just
a
like
number.
the number of cells.
Yes, it's just a number of cells. You can have anything over here. So these boxes, all that they need is something that's nothing. Even a blank space can serve as a trigger for this one. So offset, on the other hand, works like this. So essentially, offset creates a reference based on the starting point. So if you have your data, your cell data, like this. Cool. So imagine it is a spreadsheet. I know it's terribly drawn, but let's imagine it's a spreadsheet. And you want to start using offset in this cell. We can call it cell 1, 1. Let's use like a cell nomenclature, A1. You want to start in A1 and you want to create a range that's 4 rows, 3 rows high, and 3 columns wide. So you want to create a range that touches all of this, right? So 3 by 3. Offset will create that, and it will give it a name that you can assign to it wherever you want. So offset essentially works like this. Your starting point, A1, how many places you want to move left, right, up, or down? So here we're starting that cell, so essentially it's going to be 0, 0. We don't want it to move anywhere. If we wanted to start 1 below or 1 above, we'll put 1 and 1 over here. But let's just keep it 0, 0. I never change it because it's just easier to switch the pivot point then.
What,
Would you do that?
what would be the scenario where you wouldn't want the first, because you can just move that first cell to wherever you need it, right? So you could do like offset A2 instead of doing offset A1, comma of 1, comma 0.
For simplicity, it's better to do this,
Okay.
like this, for the 0, 0. I think you can potentially start doing that if you're talking about a range that moves in time with different parameters, but that sounds too complicated.
Sometimes you can use if you're trying to offset from the first column,
Mm.
and your data is gonna change, so you always put offset column cell and then enter the data below it, so that, but it's very rare, like,
Yeah.
people who are super into it, everything do it.
Yeah.
So,
Thanks. Okay. And then the other two parameters here are, I think it's number of rows, if I'm not wrong,
Columns.
and then number of columns, yeah. Number of columns, then number of rows. Right. Cool. So we know, because I told you, that this is going to be 3, 3, right? So now let's think about the pivot table that we were working in before. We started off with 21 different columns, but then we expanded it to 24, right? So essentially, I already know this to be 24, and this is going to be like 45,000 lines. But what if I keep on adding data? What if I keep on adding columns? That range will change over time. And here's where count A comes into the picture. So instead of typing this manually, I just use count A for my columns, and I use my count A for my rows.
If you have gaps in the data, is that where you have to go into the zeros so that, because let's say like it's missing a value in T8, then.
Yeah.
Well, that.
Yes.
screws things up.
That's a very good point. So to counter for that, what you do is that you use rows and columns that you know that will always have something. So what rows should you pick? So rows, usually you're going to pick the title row, which is going to be the first one. You're always going to have stuff there because you need to know what's going on there. If you don't put a title, if you don't put something on the row title that's going to go on the pivot table will not allow you to even update it. So this is always going to be like the title row. For the first one. Okay. And then what column do you think? This depends, but usually I like working with IDs for each observation. And you know that every single data point will have an ID. Later on, that's very helpful if you want to reference one specific data. So you know that by default, if you don't have it, you'll create it, and you'll have one column that will always have something in it that's called data ID. Does this make sense so far? Okay.
Can you always, is it fair to expect that data requests will come back with IDs? For example, that's something you can specify?
No. Like, it just depends on what they do. You can have it, you can not have it. I would recommend that you do one.
And then you just use an Excel function and you assign those?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like, you start at 1, then 1 plus 1 above. And that's usually the way to come up with an ID. Any other questions? Yep. Cool. Now let's apply this to our Excel.
Can you explain again the function, what's that about?
Okay, so count A essentially, it's counting non-blank cells. Now for Excel, blank can mean anything. So for Excel, blank is a cell that has nothing in it. And by definition, nothing in Excel is literally nothing. A space, like even a space is already something for Excel. So if this is an empty cell, it will be counted as nothing. So if you're doing count A over these 5 cells, and this one has something, this one has something, this one has something, this one has something, and this one has something, that function will return. Cool. Now let's go back to our Excel. So to do this, we are going to go to Name Manager. And we will create a new name.
For what cell? Count.
No, for any. Let's just start anywhere. just make sure you're on the database sheet. Click anywhere,
Okay.
go to formulas, name manager.
Is anyone on a Mac and can find name manager? Because I can't, sorry.
Oh,
Have
Mac.
you tried putting a question mark?
Yes, Mac users, I am sorry, I do not know the command for Mac.
No, this session makes me want to go.
I know.
Well, the good thing is that
Their training was free.
the good thing is that most companies use Windows, so this will be very helpful for some.
Yeah.
Stephanie, next question.
I'm trying to, you can change the name of the cell here.
Yeah,
Like here, put the name of the 1, 2, 3.
Yeah. yeah. But what we actually need like the name manager, which is I don't know how to do that.
I always do select all the data they want to name.
Mhm.
Is that what that little? Yes.
Can you try doing this one? Ollie, can you try doing this?
It
Works. Cool, so let's go back to the Excel. So now that we are all in name manager, let's try by creating a new name where it says new. And we're gonna name it database or whatever. Database underscore X. Something very important, you cannot put spaces here. If you want to put a space, the best practice in Excel or in any coding software is an underscore. So an underscore in computing is typically a space. That's how you do it. Cool. So let's start by building our formula. So I said that we're going to use offset, right? So what goes first? Our reference formula, right? So that will be cell A8. Cool, cell A8. We will not be offsetting it by any amount, so it's going to be 0, 0. Okay. And then we need to count the amount of rows that are below, right? Because it was columns. Was it?
So you put the count here on top.
No, it's column first. Yeah, my apologies. So this is actually the other way around. It's rows first and then columns.
Oh, that's not what it's here.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry. I'll update that now. So back to it, db underscore next. We're doing db underscore next as our name for the database. And now we're going to be doing equals offset we click cell A8, 0, 0. Then we do count A, and we start by counting the total amount of rows. Now to do that, we're going to click on cell, on column B. Right, because we're counting rows, but the rows are under one column. The reason I'm doing B is because we have that funky little thing up there, it says supplier Mexico, blah, 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 blah. So it will count it as additional rows, and I don't want that. So let's do it with column B.
I get it.
Cool. And now, finally, the last part of it was the amount of columns that I had, right? We talked about that we're going to use only the row that has the names of the columns in it. So it's going to be row 8. Okay. Be sure to highlight the entire row, as I am doing, and the entire column. Just click on it. We close it, we hit OK. And if it works, we should have everything included within the range. See? So it goes on to cell Z 46,791. Does everybody have that?
So what?
Was that too fast? You want me to do it again?
No, I was.
How do you, so I clicked
Uh-huh.
out, and so how do I make sure that my TV that's,
Okay.
how
Good
do I
question.
show what data is in there?
So you go to DB Max over here,
Yeah,
and you click over here, and it should highlight all the way to the bottom.
and I click where?
You click just DB Max,
Yeah.
and then over here, on the bottom part.
Just anywhere in the form.
Yeah, anywhere in the phone.
So what's the point of doing all this?
Okay, so the point of doing all of this is automatically updating pivot tables without having to do it every single time.
Data sets are expanding.
Yes, exactly.
But basically, you're giving all this data, right?
Yes, I'm giving all of that data.
So what about if you just select all the data and you change the name where in that column?
Okay, so what happens if I add a new column to it? You'll have to go again, change the name and redo it. This avoids that manual step that you'll have to do every single time. Okay, so the final step to make this work. Yep. No, they're coming.
Do you still need to refresh the pivot table data?
Yes, that's the final step for it. The final step
I thought you.
is to go again to analyze, change data source, and instead of that, you're just gonna hit equals, and you type in the name of your database as you.
It's not case sensitive, right?
No. So if that works, it should be highlighting your database with the name and the range. So now if we go to the pivot table options, this should reflect our full base. And now we can play with that as well.
Could you repeat again this last step?
Cool. Yes. So to update the pivot table with the correct range, you just go to change data source, and you type in the name of your database, where it says table range, equals, and you type in the name that you're using for it. It is not case sensitive, I'm just doing it because, yeah. And that should update it automatically. Was everybody able to do that?
But this is not.
Yeah, we can try doing a max session.
Yeah, we need to learn this.
Cool. So, so what's the point of doing this, as Luis said? So the point of doing this is that if you keep on adding columns, then you don't have to start updating this every single time. So let's say that I want to calculate the unit price of each item. And the unit price, and I'm just going to go very quickly through these, it's just as a matter of example. The unit price here is just going to be the amount spent times the PO quantity. So you just do column J9 divided by column S8, S9, sorry, because you're giving the unit price of each one of these items. And then the FX rate, because this is Mexican pesos, this is going to be your dollar amount divided by your purchase price. And now I have two more columns, right? So I just made up two different columns. And now I want to actually take a look at those. So before, what you had to do to refresh the pivot table was select the range, redo it again, hit OK, and pray you didn't forget something. With this formula, all you have to do is hit refresh. Just pay attention to this little corner over here. Just hit refresh, and it automatically puts it. So you have unit and FX rate as well. So as you're working with your Excel, you just have to hit refresh, and you have the data right there available for you. You don't have to redo any of the ranges. You don't have to rename anything. It's just automatic refresh. You're good to go. Drag, drop, and keep on doing your analysis. Okay. Are there any questions so far?
Do you need to use that refresh button if you're just changing something itself?
So every time you modify the database behind a pivot table, you will need to hit refresh.
What was the FX formula again? Out of curiosity.
It was just K9 over K9. Cool. Any questions so far? No. Great. So the next step in our analysis involves getting those nasty reversals out of the way. Now the categories, and we're not gonna have time for this, so I just unhide cells B and W. So to do that, you just, so there were a couple hidden rows there. I'm sorry. So when you hide and unhide stuff in Excel, to unhide it, you just select columns behind it, and then you unhide it. Now these are the actually correctly classified categories. To do it, you literally have to apply brute force. And by brute force, I mean like going through every single invoice and categorizing it again. For other ways to do it, they involve software programming. So for now, let's just take it as a given, and we can talk about other formulas for that if we have time at the end of the session. Okay? Cool. So let's take the reversals out of the way. And to get those out of the way, I need to use conditional formulas. Okay? So essentially what was a reversal? A reversal was nothing else than just negative value in my spec, right? So here is where the ifs come into play. Does anybody using them in Excel before? Yeah. Okay. So basically, since we know it's a negative spend, we go to our spend column, which is somewhere around here. J9 less than 0. And if it's less than 0, then the value should be reversal. If not, let's just name it spend. Now, very important, if you want to name something like this in Excel, you have to open quotations. So if it's negative, it's a reversal. And if it's non-negative, it is spend. Okay, so that's a way in which you can use conditional formulas in Excel as well. And again, going back to our pivot table, if you just refresh, let's take the dates out of the picture for now. If you just use refresh, you will see a reversal filter coming up here, right? So you put that into filters, and we only analyze spend. These are the numbers we want to work with. Cool. Great. Any questions so far? Cool. So now, let's just assume that we cleaned the database, and these were the results that the team analysis found. Now, to build this pivot table, all you have to do is the following. You go to field list, and instead of using spend subcategory, you're going to use a column called subtype, not type sub. And that gives you this same pivot table that I have over here. Right. However, what's the point of doing this? So, unfortunately, I need to compare them side by side, right? Like the whole point of doing an after and before is to understand the gap in between and come up with an action plan to why that's happening. So if you go to sample output in your database, you will see the categories and a template for gap analysis. So one way to do this is literally copy and pasting the values of the pivot table into this output for each of the categories, right? Like I can just go ahead and do this. Okay, so I'm just going to copy, and then I just go and paste it, right? That's a way of doing it. But what if I need to categorize something again? What if I made a mistake? It will be reflected over here. You have to go update the pivot table, copy the values again, and make sure you're copying in the right location. So a way to avoid that is by using sums. Now there are different flavors of conditional summing and counting. There's sum if you want to add stuff. There is count if you want to count stuff. there's a max if, you want to find a maximum for it, a minimum if, and so forth. They all follow the same approach, so I'm just going to use the sum if as an example for this, but feel free to play along with it as well later on. So just type sum ifs here. And this has, so the way in which this formula works is that you'll basically have, you need to start with your range that you're adding, then the criteria. Very important, the range that you're adding needs to have the same dimension that the range that you're having a criteria over. So if you're adding 1,000 rows, the criteria range should also have 1,000 rows. So what I'm doing right now, and I hope that all of you are following me, is that I'm going to place the values of the original analysis over here and the values of the adjusted analysis over here. Cool. And then we'll calculate the difference, and I'll tell you a bit more about our own troubleshooting so that this is not looking bad, I believe, when you're presenting your report to somebody. So you hit sum ifs over here in the Excel. It's going to ask you to get the sum range.
What's the difference between sum if and sum ifs?
Sum if is just for one criteria.
Okay.
Sum ifs is for multiple criteria. The problem with sum if is that it will ask you for a criteria first and then for the sum range, whereas sum ifs will ask you for the sum range first and then for the summing criteria. It's easier to use sum ifs even if it's one because you know that you'll always have to put the summing range first. Cool. So it's sum ifs, and it's going to ask you for a sum range. Now, very important is that you highlight the entire column. Why? If you add more observations below or you delete observations, you'll need to update the formula. So it's better just to highlight the entire column where it's going to be and forget about that as we go forward. And we're going to anchor it. Now anchoring is just a fancy name for hitting a formula. Cool. So now my criteria range. So I am going to be using spend subcategory. So it's going to be column M. Again, anchor it at the entire range. We go back to our sample output and we hit the row that we're doing. And if we want to be quicker, we anchor it only in the column so that we can move it below and automatically fill up all the values. Enter too few arguments. Why? Yeah, sorry. If you do it correctly, you'll get this. And let's do it in millions, so divide the number by a million. Okay. So to fill it down, there are a couple of ways to do it. Personally, what I like to do is just highlight the range, hit F2, and then just Control Enter. I think it's part of what we're learning over at the Trading the Street session. It's easier and it doesn't mess up the formats. Okay, so that's your original amount. You can double check it with your pivot table if you want to, but it should match the same amount. So, cool. So now we want to do the same for the adjusted amount, and we're going to repeat the formula. And something you can do if you want to, at least I do it a lot, since we already anchored everything, is just to copy the formula to the right, and then just change the criteria range that you're asking for. So in our database, instead of conditioning this on M, we will be conditioning it at V. So we change that over here manually in the Excel. Or reaches. Okay. And it will match the pivot table above, sorry. We've eliminated that nasty reversal problem that we had before, so now we've obviously inflated this quite a bit. The very new categories into here. And there's one thing that's bothering me right now. You know what it is? It's that divided by 0, right? So this is something you could actually like send to somebody in an email, like, hey, I've actually looked at the spend, I've classified it again, let me know your thoughts. but it has like this very ugly looking hashtag divider zero, like it's tweeting something, but no. So that's an error in Excel, and it's the divide by zero error. Now Excel has a very nice formula that's called if error. Now if error assigns any value of your choice to an error. So instead of having divide over zero error, you can get a black space. So go to cell F4 and type in the following. If error, you open up the parentheses, and then for your error value, just put a blank space. A blank space is just quotation and close quotation. Close it, again, you copy down the formula, and now you have a blank space. You can also try doing an NA for like not applicable. And you'll get an NA. The good thing about it is that your averages and anything that you're working on this will not be affected because it treats it as a number. Does anybody have a question so far?
Yeah, just cell T4, so what did you change from C4 to D4?
Oh, so I just, instead of M, I changed to B.
Alright.
Cool. So, yeah, so what's kind of like the point about doing this analysis? So let's take a look at the fundamentals behind this so we can start thinking about where to go. Now, the adjusted amount as a percentage of total spend over here, the original amount as a percentage of total spend over here. So what we've done right now is that we've found out that some expenses, such as utilities, were actually overestimated, whereas other expenses, such as building services, were underestimated. And that's more in line with what we thought. However, other expenses are sort of flat, and then facilities went down to zero. Right, so what does this mean? It means that I need to like start digging deeper into my data to understand what's going on. So now that I know that I've eliminated these problems, my categories are correct now, my reversals are correct, and my formats are sort of correct, I can finally do the analysis that I want to do. And what we're going to do for the next 10 minutes, hopefully, is the very simple tail spend analysis. Has anybody worked in supply chain before? Yes. Sorry?
The formula for the adjusted amount.
Okay. So it's just the same as the one next to it,
Yeah.
but you change MM to BB. Okay. So we're going to be doing a tail spend analysis, and it's just a mouthful for like dividing the spend into an 80-20 category. It's very simple, but it allows us to use two different things. A VLOOKUP, and we will need to use conditional substring. So let's do it. So if you go to parameters, you will see a couple of placeholders left over here. Great. So to do this, we go back to our pivot table, and we need to rank the vendors for spend only from more spend to less spend using current. Current name and rows. Make sure you're putting the reversal filter over here. That column that we created, that's called reversal. Drag it to filters. And make sure you're only clicking on spend. Okay. And then finally, you sort it from largest to smallest. Does everybody have something like that? Okay. So here is where you have to do manual stuff. You literally just copy this and you paste it in that parameter string under cell A3. You should have Gobierno del Estado de Colima in cell A3, parameters tab with a spend of $37 million. And municipio, blah, 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 with zero spend in cell 1800. Cool. So now to do the percent of total, it's very simple. So we've learned a couple things that can be useful for now. We just add stuff, anchor it, and then click it, right? So it's simple, but we need the percent running total. So to do that, you start just adding it, and this could be done quicker with other methods, but this is more straightforward. You just add up the one with the one button. And now we're going to use conditional formats, so conditional formulas to determine the right approach for this. So since we're doing tailspin, we know that tailspin will be 80%, will be even top 20%. So if this value is under 80%, it's just going to be non-tail. And if it's above, you just call it tailspin. So everybody should have something like that. Just copy it. And just to make sure that you're on track, when the running percentage drops above 80%, this should switch to tailspin. Cool. Great. So what's the point? So now we're ranking our vendors, but we need to take a look at categories associated to each vendor to understand where that tailspin is coming from, right? So that's kind of the whole point we're doing over here. So here is where the VLOOKUP comes into place. Now the VLOOKUP is a very powerful formula that allows you to look up one value from one table and place it into another. What I want to do now is the following. I want to assign a tailspin code to every single invoice over here, so that I can look back at my pivot table and understand what's going on with different categories. So to do that, I want some sort of name over here. You create a new column, you can call it tailspin vendor. And we start with a VLOOKUP. So now, the VLOOKUP, and for those of you that have never used it, requires only 4 parameters. It requires a value that you're looking up. It requires a table that you're looking in. And it requires a reference in that table. And that reference is usually associated to the number that you want to drag and put into a different place. There's also another value that goes into it. It's true or false, a true or false lookup. And essentially a true lookup will give you the possibility of looking for the exact value, whereas the false one will give you the possibility of looking for a value below that. So if you're working for, say, if you're working with 20% and you want to look up a value below that, you're going to have to use a VLOOKUP with a false one. But we won't be going to those details. We're just going to be using the exact value. Cool. So I want to understand whether or not that vendor falls into my tailspin category over here, and I want to do it using a VLOOKUP. So what was my code? It was my vendor name, right? My parent name. So I look it up. Here it is, parent name. I reference only the column. I go to my table that I'm looking at stuff, which is going to be in parameters. You select the entire range, and you fix it. Why do you anchor it? Because this is something we'll be dragging and dropping all the way down. And if you don't fix this and if you don't anchor it, you'll lose that range, and you'll come up with a bunch of errors later on. Okay. And then finally, you need to come up with a column index. So here, it's just very simple. You're counting how many columns you want to need. So this is going to be your first column, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then finally, the tailspin category is in 5. So you put 5 over here. And finally, we close it up with 0 for exact match. And if done correctly, you should get tailspin for the first category, for the first vendor, the first line.
Is the tailspin, D, is it when the percentage total is less than 80%, or is it when the running total is less?
With a running total less than 80%. So it's tail when it's above 80%. It's non-tail when it's below 80%. Okay, so again, we just wrap it with the bottom, and just to make sure that we're aligned, okay, non-tail and tail, and yet again, there's an error. Remember whether there was an error over here? Because I had excluded reversals, right? So here's where that nice error handling format that I showed you comes into the picture. And as you can see, I'm building bigger formulas within one formula, and this is very helpful, so you avoid coding stuff over and over again. And let's just put it out of scope. Again, you update the formula, you should be good to go. Go back to your pivot table, update it, and you should have the tailspin over here with values. Now what's the point? I already did it, but I want to look over the categories, right? So if I want to do a filter only for tailspin with my correct categories, and here it is. This is how it's broken. Cool. So we found out that this is where the tailspin is going, but what does that mean, right? It makes no sense because I need to compare it with something else. So the last step in analysis before we go into one last formula that I do want to cover, just index match. We're going to go to sample output, and here we're literally just adding up the spend. Let me see why this is not working. It's just very strange. So if you, again, you have to like run it through that. So here, because I just want to get the insights and we'll talk about the index match, right? Adding it up. Right. It's actually the right thing I'm using was still spent. There's always like Excel troubleshooting stuff. Okay, cool. So again, it's just applying the same logic. And I'm just going to run through this one so we can go through index matches. It's another very important formula. But as you can see, by doing this analysis using VLOOKUPs, conditional summings, formatting formulas as well, and recategorizing stuff, we've come to some interesting conclusions over here. First conclusion is that even though we're dealing with only 20% of the spend, construction and building improvement represents 40% of the spend. So looking back to the context of data analysis, the insight here is that we have a bunch of spend and very low quantities. So construction and building improvement is a category that represents, I have the number on top. It represents 33% of my spend, but almost half of it is in spend that's below $1,000. So that means that I have a completely out of my supply chain and I need to go and rationalize. So insight number one, dig deeper into construction and building improvement to understand there's a possibility to rationalize the supply chain. Insight number two out of here is that security guards, even though they represent 1.2% of your total spend, 6.2% of your total tail spend comes to security guards. So what this means is that, I mean, overall it should be 20 if you're like being par with your overall rule, but it's only 6. So it means that most of my spend is going to big contracts, but since it's security guards, like why can't I just have more big contracts and eliminate it with 6.2%? So the 2 key insights over here is, first off, very atomized supply chain over here. Look at that, rationalize it. Insight number 2 is probably there's still some more room for improvement in here as well, because you could probably eliminate that 6.2% with bigger contracts and just have a more robust supply chain. Utilities, not much to do. Others used to be very much aligned with the 20% rule that we came up with. Facilities and professional services will probably follow a similar approach to security and physical guards. What we ended up doing in this project is that we actually did an RFP for security guards and replaced all the different vendors with just one provider for all the Mexican operations. Similar approach for facilities and professional services. We found out that they were spending like $1.5 million in fire extinguishers. We're also spending upwards of $9 million in just cleaning supplies. And that meant that we had to really rationalize that, probably outsource it to whoever was managing the facilities and reduce those costs. Construction and building improvement, what we decided to do there was outsource all of the maintenance and building services to one specific vendor, and that allowed to eliminate most of that $40 million or so. Any questions so far? So one final formula that I want to cover is index match. Now, if you go to the tab called index match, I've already preloaded this one for you guys, so we don't have to put up the format. But index match is basically a pivot table on steroids. Sorry, it's basically a VLOOKUP on steroids. And it has a very easy way to apply. There's a little space over here. So index match will do the following. So index is a formula that allows you to understand where something is located in a matrix. So basically index will do this. They'll give you like an argument, then they'll look it up in a column, again another argument, look it up in a row, and it'll give you exactly that one. So if you want to look up something in a matrix that's 4 by 4 in the cell 1-1, you can literally do that using an index. So you just go select the entire range, 1, and it's going to give you the item that's over here. Kind of like VLOOKUP. But what if you don't know exactly the position that something is in? What if you don't know where it's falling? You can have 50 cells, 50 rows, and 50 columns. So to do that, you use match. And match, essentially what it does is that it'll tell you, okay, so I have a matrix over here. I have a value that you want me to test. I will return the position in which that value is located in your matrix. And it has to be either rows or columns, nothing bigger than that. So when you combine them, what you're doing is essentially doing a VLOOKUP with another VLOOKUP, or a VLOOKUP with an HLOOKUP at the same time. So what this means is that if we go back to our Excel, is the following. Now this looks a bit scary at first, and you can try this one at home later on. Or if you have any questions, you can follow up with me offline. But if you look up at this formula, essentially what it is doing is looking up a specific spend for a specific year for a specific category, right? So I know that these are my years, these are my spend subcategories, which are like 40 something, and I just wanted to return one specific value for one specific year. So what do? First, I select my entire range of data without including titled rows or titled columns. That's why only the blue stuff is marked over here. Then I use match for the rows. I want you to match my category over here, and I'll return a number. and then I want to match the columns with a year over here, and I'll return another number. Combination of this is that it'll return me whatever value I give it for whatever year. If you go to credit reports for all years, you'll see it'll be 1. So if you want, you can play around with this formula. I've automated it for you guys, so you can take a look at it, expand it, delete stuff, add stuff. If you have any questions with this one, I'll be more than happy to answer them later on. Cool. So just to wrap it up, I'll let you guys go for today. So what we learned today was a couple things. So first off, follow the data pick principles that we talked about earlier to transform data into insights. On top of that, make sure that you're determining whether the data is accurate, unreconciled, or incomplete. If so, apply these Excel techniques that you have on the handout or elsewhere that you know, and make sure that you're not asking for data that you can solve yourself first. Then make sure that you are adjusting everything as you go on. Some of the formulas we talked today, like the automation of the pivot table, is something you can do to make your life easy, because you will be probably reworking stuff a lot. But you have to write it the first time, so make sure that you're spending less time in Excel and more time analyzing stuff. And finally, if you still don't know how something works, you can always Google it, or as Jessica said, YouTube it. We have no idea the amount of YouTube channels that are out there just teaching people Excel for every single formula. Just by having the little cheat sheet that I gave you, with that, just look it up on Google if you know how to use it, and there will definitely be more than one video. So what's up next? Analytics and data visualization with Tableau. That's going to be next Friday, right? Yeah, next Friday. That's going to be taught by Max 7. So if you want to come to that session, make sure you download it and install the free license for Tableau. It's available on our website. It's like 2 or 3 months for free, but it's very useful. Many companies are using it right now, so make sure you have that. Then finally, we're going to be having another session on May 3rd for preparing for fall recruiting, if you guys are interested in doing that later on in the fall. We'll have a panel of several second-year students that will talk to us about our insights on recruiting for full-time later on this year. We're going to have a social on May 4th, hopefully. Yeah.
Still finalizing the date, probably.
Yeah. So it'll be another social. We'll send the invites sometime soon. And we're going to wrap it up with PowerPoint slide design shortcuts by Melanie, if I'm not wrong. She will be teaching this session on the 5th of May. Hopefully all of you can come. If not, we will be trying to record all the sessions and post them on the website. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to take them. If not, just feel free to go. Thanks.